Namaste. We're coming to the end of chapter 3 of the Gita, and I've talked several times about the importance of rising above the ego, and there's one aspect that has yet to be touched that is quite important, and that is that there's the natural thought that if the ego is not the thing, you've got to let God be the doer and let Him do things through you. Then it doesn't really matter how well you do them, because to try to be excellent seems like a manifestation of ego, doesn't it? If I'm trying to do a sculpture and try very hard to do a good job of doing this sculpture, then naturally the thought comes in, well, I'm doing it. But the truth is that until you have learned to give it your very best, you have not yet learned this teaching. The fact that God is doing it doesn't mean you can be slipshod. I've said it doesn't mean that you're not doing anything and just let Him do it. As I said about the Hollywood Church one time when I was giving a sermon on Sunday, and decided that since God has to be the doer and I have to think of Him as that, therefore let me just stop speaking. Well, it didn't work. I found that after 2 minutes, people in the audience were perspiring for thinking I'd sort of frozen with terror. But no, I was perfectly comfortable. I just wanted to find out if God would actually speak through me. And I found out He didn't. So yes, you can have this idea that God is acting through you, but the thought that you must be better does seem to be an egoic thing, and in fact it is not. We must learn in anything that we do to do it as well as we can. And this is not such an easy teaching to absorb. I have found that being committed to this path, being committed to overcoming my ego and rising above all sense of doership, that it becomes very important to do it as well as I can for God's sake. In other words, you're offering what you're doing to God. Don't you want to offer Him something beautiful rather than slipshod? It's a very interesting thought, because here God is an infinite one. And He created 100 billion or more galaxies in this physical universe, and the astral universe is much, much larger than the physical. So how can He care very much how well you do something? It doesn't matter in the general scheme of things. But there is such a wonderful relationship between the individual and the infinite. If you can find God in your own center, you have found Him everywhere. You don't have to go out and work to become sympathetic with everybody. That's one way to do it. It's the social way of finding God, to learn to love your neighbor, to love your neighborhood, to love your family, to love mankind, gradually expanding your consciousness outward. But the truth is that if you try, now God of course is an infinite thing, but there's a personal side to the spiritual path, and we find that particularly in the Guru. We need a Guru. We can't find God without one. And it doesn't seem a necessary thing to please the Guru. After all, if God is pleased, what does it matter whether the Guru is pleased or not? The Guru is God. And the fact is that somehow to please the Guru means to please God. I had a big tussle on this whole question for some time in the beginning of my path. I remember I was sitting here and my Guru was standing here, and my Guru was standing about 2 yards away from me. And I was thinking, trying to work this whole thing out. I was puzzling it out, and I thought, well, He's not really there. He's really inside me. And so if I think of Him as there, then that's not the whole truth. I must realize that God is inside me, and therefore the Guru is inside me. I have to go within. Therefore, should I deny the thought that He's there? And He knew my thoughts, and it was so cute the way He handled that. He came right up to me and looked at me very knowingly with a sweet smile and gave me an apple. What he was saying is that, yes, I'm here, God is here in your heart, but still you have a human relationship with me. And it's not wrong to have a human relationship. We mustn't somehow become zombies, or we mustn't somehow become so impersonal that we don't have any personal or human feelings. It is such a toss-up between the truth on one side and the truth on the other side, and how to keep it all together. My guru said it's like running a race and performing stunts on the way. Anyway, by pleasing the guru, you please God. And I have known quite a few disciples who didn't quite understand that. And they think, after all, God is always pleased, so why did it matter how I do it? And they think that, after all, if I do it well, as I said, then maybe my ego is involved. We must rise above those thoughts and realize that God is the doer, yes, but he does it through us. And through us, we cannot reach him except through what we understand. So the whole teaching of Swami Shankara, which was that God has not a form, he's an abstract and impersonal reality, the nature of which is such an Ananda, or ever-existing, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss. Well, how then do we reach this point of understanding that God is also human? We have to see that because that's how we understand it. I mean, in other words, we can't understand anything except through our own understanding. That is to say, our experience. If we have experienced a level of truth, then we can say that we've understood it, at least to that extent. But when people worship God in form and so on, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a fallacy to say that God is infinite and also personal. This is the beautiful thing about God, that you can worship him as mother, you can worship him as father, as beloved, as friend. He is everything. But that which is real to you is the road you have to take. So there's so many different paths to God: the impersonal path, the personal path, the path of devotion, the path of discrimination. One thing I will tell you, even in Jnana, it is not a dry path. There is great delight in finding new truths, in explaining them in new ways, in understanding that the truth behind everything is full of bliss. So everything, every path, jnana, karma, bhakti, laya, all these things, ultimately we have to understand that the goal of them is Satchidananda, is bliss. And everything you do should be done for bliss. And so, when you are trying your best to serve God, then of course it doesn't matter to him whether you do it or not do it. I said to a saint once, I want to please you, meaning God in that person. And the reply was, God, that I'm always pleased. Yeah, but it wasn't adequate to me. Of course she's always pleased. Of course the Divine Mother is always pleased. But the thing is that we have to feel that pleasure ourselves. We have to understand, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, that when Krishna replies, as if smiling, in the second chapter, those are two very important words, as if smiling. In other words, Arjuna, the devotee, he's really a master already, but he's playing the part of the devotee, as Yogananda did in Autobiography of a Yogi. And he has reached a very definite level of spiritual progress when God can show his pleasure to you. But the more you know that you are right in your heart, the more you will feel this responsive bliss inwardly. And actually, it's a very difficult decision for devotees, because to do a thing as well as you can requires patience, requires great involvement, requires personal dedication. And I have to say that this is this is my understanding. Maybe somebody wiser than I would come to me and say, no, you've got it wrong. It's not quite like that. Anyway, from my experience, I can only speak. And I can say that from my experience, even though I have worked very hard in my life, and my guru also told me, your path is one of intense activity and meditation. And I have had to work very hard. I've written over 100 books. I've composed more than 400 pieces of music. I've founded 8 communities. I've taken 15,000 photographs. I've done paintings. It's kind of scary when I think of all the things I've done. And I've tried my best to do them right. And I know many devotees would say, well, what does it matter? I'm doing it, isn't that enough? But I feel that it's important to get it as right as you possibly can. And this often means going over a work maybe 50 times before I'm satisfied. But when you do that, I have found from my experience, God is very pleased. You feel his pleasure inside. And so I can say that from my point of view, I know I'm right. Anyway, whatever you do, if you're a businessman, the natural thought of a devotee is to say, well, business is just materialism, so I shouldn't worry about how I do my business. No, if this is your duty, you should do it as well as you can. But what does that well mean? Don't think in terms of what you're gaining from this, the money you're making, the fame and success you're achieving and so on. You must give these things to God so that your work, you think of in terms of giving to him the best energy that is in you. Now that is something that many devotees would balk at. I have to say, therefore, that yes, this is my belief, my experience, and I may be wrong, and I will accept that if I am. But I really think that the more I do my very best. I remember many years ago, I was working very hard to earn the money. I don't like making money. It's really against my nature. I know that when I was 16 years old, my father wanted to get me a tuxedo. And I said, Dad, don't bother. I'll never wear it. In fact, I'm never going to earn enough money to pay income tax. And that has been true in my life. I just knew even at the age of 16 that my life would be for another cause. And so money was never an object for me. And I asked the Divine Mother again and again, I don't want money, I don't like money. Why have you put me in this position where I have to earn so much? And I was earning about $50,000 a year, which back in 1968 was a lot more money than it is now. But I was doing it by teaching classes a different night, a different city every night. And I have to say, I have to admit, I really kind of resented that Divine Mother forced me to. But I knew that she wanted me to build a community. I knew that I didn't have any big donors. I had to do it all myself. And all the money I got for building and buying the land and everything, it came from me. And I was thinking, why have you forced me to be a materialist, to think in terms of money? But you know, at the end of it all, when I had built the first buildings and got Ananda launched and people were living there and so on, I found that the strength that what I gained from it was strength. It wasn't money. It was the strength that comes from doing what you have to do and doing it as well as you can. And God did his part too. I had about 300 students a week in different cities. A different city every night, as I said, but 300 is a good number. And that gave me my income to build this thing. I didn't want anything for myself. And so nishkam karma, it means not to be desiring the fruits of action. And I didn't desire them for myself. It was a desireless desire. But nonetheless, I had to work very hard. And even now, I think, my gosh, it's probably the reason I have a tricky heart and different things. My body has been a problem for me. I've had to replace my hips, one of them twice. I've had to have my heart operated on and my valve replaced and all sorts of things. I don't need to go into these things because I'm not lamenting at all. I'm saying, thank God, he has always shown me what I had to do. But remember, your ego will say that this is ego. It will not be ego if you do it for God. And it will not be ego if you do the best possible job you can for God. And if you don't, then you're still a slipshod devotee. You must learn to put everything you have into your efforts. And that means when you meditate also, don't be satisfied with just a little bit of effort. Do your very best. I do remember one time, it was a Saturday, and I felt that a little bit more and I would go into breathlessness. And I meditated 9 hours, each moment trying harder and harder and harder. At the end I had to admit failure. And the breaking of my will in that took me many months to get rid of, many months to overcome. I was discouraged for a while. So never work to the point of exhaustion, but work as long as you can. I've always made it a principle, and this is something else that I think touches closely on this question of ego. I've never allowed anything to upset my peace of mind. I've even if it meant not doing something quite important, I felt, no, my peace of mind comes first. And I think that in your attempt to do things as well as you can, don't get frazzled. Don't start pulling your hair out. Just understand that you must at least, as your priority, as your bottom line, we might say, you must keep your inner peace, because from peace you can do things well. When you've lost your peace, you cannot do anything well. So I would also add to what I've been saying, do it the best you can, but do it peacefully. There is so much joy when you find that God is working through you, and everything you do takes you closer to that bliss. And then you realize what a wonderful thing is this path, and what a wonderful thing is this great scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Joy to you.